On a humid January morning in 1998, the city of São Paulo awoke slowly, its neighborhoods still wrapped in the hush of early hours. In Ipiranga, the streets were quiet, interrupted only by the scent of fresh bread wafting from the corner bakery. Leticia, a bright-eyed 7-year-old, was already up, dressed in denim shorts, flip-flops, and a white t-shirt adorned with a cartoon character. This was a familiar Saturday ritual. Her mother, Teresa, would hand her a few coins and a list, trusting her to fetch the morning bread and milk from the bakery just a few blocks away. But on this particular day, Leticia never returned. As the clock ticked past 8, then 9, Teresa's unease grew into panic. She hurried to the bakery only to learn that Leticia had never arrived. Frantic, she scoured the neighborhood, asking neighbors, shopkeepers, and bus drivers if they'd seen her daughter. No one had. She checked the local market, the bus stops, even Leticia's school, despite it being closed for the weekend. By nightfall, dread had settled over the household, heavy and suffocating. Leticia's father, Jorge, rushed to the nearest police station, his mind racing with questions and fear. The hours crawled by, stretching into days. The family's world contracted to a single, desperate focus: finding Leticia. The community rallied, plastering her photo on lampposts, shop windows, and subway stations. Volunteers searched alleys, vacant lots, and the banks of the nearby Tamanduate River. Through it all, one question echoed: how could a child vanish in broad daylight, just 2 blocks from home? 3 days later, a phone call shattered the silence. An anonymous voice claimed to have seen a little girl alone in a vacant lot near Avenida do Estado. The police responded immediately. There, amid tall weeds and scattered trash, they found Leticia. She was sitting on the ground, knees drawn to her chest, her clothes dirty and her face scratched. Her eyes were glassy, fixed on something far away. When an officer approached and spoke to her, Leticia didn't answer. She just repeated, in a barely audible whisper, "Carolina, Carolina." Leticia was taken to the hospital. Though she bore no serious injuries, she was dehydrated and in deep shock. There were no signs of physical abuse, but her silence spoke volumes. The only clue was the name she kept repeating: Carolina. No one in the family recognized it. Leticia had no sisters or close cousins by that name and had never mentioned a friend called Carolina. For weeks, Leticia remained silent. She slept fitfully, often waking in the night, crying out the same name. Psychologists tried to reach her, but it was as if she had locked away all memory of those missing days. Meanwhile, the family's life unraveled. Teresa could no longer work. Jorge, consumed by guilt, took to sleeping on the couch. Their home became a place of waiting, shadowed by anxiety and unanswered questions. The Leticia, who had once confidently run errands for the bakery, now refused to leave her room. The cheerful, independent girl seemed lost in a place no one could reach. It was not until 3 months after her disappearance that a glimmer of change appeared. Leticia drew a picture: a red house with a tree beside it, and in front, 2 girls holding hands. When asked who the other girl was, she pointed to the figure with braids and said, "Carolina." Teresa's voice shook as she asked, "Did you see Carolina where you were?" Leticia nodded, but said nothing more. The psychologist seized upon the name. using it as a thread to gently guide Leticia back through her memories. Slowly, Leticia revealed that Carolina was a slightly older girl who lived there. She didn't know her last name, nor where there was, but she insisted Carolina had helped her hide. This revelation sent shockwaves through the investigation. Police returned to the vacant lot and nearby areas, searching for any sign of another child. They found nothing. There were no recent reports of a missing girl named Carolina, and no evidence of a child living on the streets with that name. But Leticia's conviction never wavered. "She protected me," she whispered. When asked from whom, Leticia would fall silent again. Only once, in the midst of a restless dream, did she murmur, "He smelled like gasoline." Jorge clung to this phrase as a potential clue. He began canvassing the neighborhood, looking for anyone who might fit the description. Gas station attendants, mechanics, scrap collectors. His search led him to an abandoned warehouse a few blocks from home, used by a man who worked as an informal tire repairman. Neighbors said he often brought old tires and oil cans there. When police investigated the warehouse, they found evidence that someone had been living there. Old mattresses, empty food cans, broken dolls. But the tire repairman had vanished. He stopped coming to work and left the warehouse locked from the outside, as if trying to erase any trace of what had happened. Now, a new question haunted the community. What if Leticia had not been the only one? What if Carolina had really existed? Rumors spread quickly. Some neighbors recalled seeing a girl named Carolina living on the streets years before. Others remembered a girl who begged for food at the market, always alone, then disappeared for weeks at a time. But no one knew her story or where she had come from. The investigation now pursued two paths: uncovering Carolina's identity and locating the missing tire repairman. Meanwhile, Leticia's recovery was painstakingly slow. She began to have fewer nightmares, and in her therapy sessions, she started drawing more often. Her pictures always depicted two girls on the run, hiding in tight spaces, under beds, behind walls, inside closets. One drawing stood out: a large hand with dirty fingernails gripping the arm of one of the girls. There was no face, only the shadow of a man. Months passed before an anonymous tip led police to the tire repairman in the city of Santos, working as a mechanic's assistant in a poor neighborhood. He was arrested and brought in for questioning. He denied everything, claiming never to have seen Leticia or known anyone named Carolina. But his behavior was odd. He seemed more concerned with what Leticia remembered than with defending himself. With a warrant, police searched the old warehouse again, this time more thoroughly. They dug beneath a patch of fresh cement and found, buried in the earth, children's clothing, a small hairbrush with Carolina written in pen, and deeper still, human bones belonging to a child. Weeks later, forensic analysis confirmed the remains belonged to a girl between 9 and 11 years old. Her identity could not be conclusively established, but the hairbrush was enough for Leticia's family to accept the truth. Carolina had existed, and she had died there. Leticia was never told the full details. Her parents chose to shield her from the harshest truths, but in her heart, she seemed to know. On a rainy afternoon, staring out the window, she whispered to her mother, "She stayed with me the whole time. Until he fell asleep, she didn't leave me alone." The arrest brought some relief, but not true peace. Police concluded the man had lured street children to the warehouse with promises of food and shelter. The case was barely mentioned in the media, but it became a collective trauma for the neighborhood. Mothers began escorting their children everywhere. The bakery felt farther away, and freedom was replaced by caution. Years went by. Leticia grew up, moved to a new neighborhood, finished school. Yet the shadow of that summer in 1998 lingered. In her teenage years, she began writing short stories about courage and fear. She never mentioned Carolina by name, but in nearly every tale, a braided-haired girl appeared at moments of greatest danger. A calm, smiling figure who would take the protagonist's hand and quietly say, "It's going to be okay." At 18, Leticia volunteered for a reading program for homeless children. During one session, a little girl asked if ghosts were real. Leticia smiled, paused, and replied, "Sometimes what's scary isn't the ghosts, it's the silence. But there's always someone close by, even when we think we're alone." In that moment, it wasn't just Leticia speaking. It was also the memory of a forgotten girl, never buried with a name or a photograph, but kept alive in drawings, nightmares, and the quiet courage of another child. A girl who made it home because someone, perhaps the only person who truly understood fear, stayed with her until the end. Carolina was not an angel or a spirit. She was a real girl with a name, a story, and an absence that taught Leticia to survive. Her existence, shrouded in mystery, saved a life. And that was enough to make her unforgettable.